Hello, everybody.
For a while.
My name is Danner Caveman Films. Some of you might not have seen my face before, and so hi, how's it going? I want to first start off this video by saying thank you guys for all the support through the years. MNAF started in 2015,
Jesus.
and yeah, I mean that's 7 years. I've seen comments where people were like, "I started watching at the age of 8. Now I'm 15." It's crazy to me, and it really just puts into perspective how much time I've spent doing YouTube. I haven't been uploading as much recently because unfortunately YouTube isn't sustainable as a full-time job as of yet. I'm hoping to change that again in the future. And if you'd like to support me doing that, you can help me by you could either I've got a merch store now, links in the description below. You can buy some just generic caveman merch. We're going to have some MNAF merch on there in the future. And also this video is also sponsored by Opera GX. So if you would like to help me continue doing this full-time, check this out. It's completely free to you, and I'll see you after the ad. I've never really put much. All right, everybody, it's time to finally get into that timeline. So I want to get ahead of everything first by saying there are a lot of things I've established in the lore that are going to be brought up again in future episodes. So I'm going to skip over the new revelations to those because we're going to show them to you. I don't want to spoil it. First thing that will be stated is that Dan is older than you guys think. He was born in the year 1980. So he is 13 years older than real Dan and way older than he had any right to be acting the way he does. So there's your first new lore stuff.
There's like 40.
I'm also going to be saying around that time, Michael Afton, which is William Afton or Ronaldo's son, was born as well. So Dan and Michael are about the same age. They're not related like physically in any way. I want to get ahead of that. That's not going to be a theory. It's not like Dan is Michael's brother or another relative to William Afton. That's not going on. We still have the bite of 83. Around that time as well, Circus Baby, or what will become Circus Baby, which is William's daughter, Amelia, she is born. And sadly, she loses her mother, Ophelia, to childbirth. So you guys might have been like, oh, Dan messed up by calling Amelia Ophelia, but no, they're two separate people. He tries to revive Ophelia in Origins as Ballora. So there you go. Fazbear Family Diner, you know, you have the bite of 83. That completely screws the public image up, and they end up selling it to Fazbear Entertainment. So that's when Fazbear Entertainment becomes the actual business. In 1986, William goes to a robotics convention and he meets somebody that we'll find out in the future. That's all I'm saying. Right before Dan's birthday party at Fazbear's, and the bite of 87 happens, but it's not really a bite, is it? It's more like a mutilation. Yeah. Amelia Afton is hit by a car and passes away. We see this in Fun Park, and William Afton does not like that, obviously. That is when he decides he wants to really bring his daughter back to life. That's his motivation, because Gray Guy, which is Michael Afton's spirit, tells Dan this, and you know, you've seen it. If you haven't, watch it. I mean, there's a whole movie, 11 hours long. It's crazy. By the way, thank you for your support for that. That was crazy. I did not expect so many people to watch it. It's really helped me try to make ends meet because, like I said, I haven't been able to do YouTube full time. So thank you again for your continued support, and I hope you like what's coming next. There is some stuff that happens I can't tell you yet, but we'll be finding that out in Vacancy Filled. Then, of course, episode 0 happens of Fun Park, which is Dan's birthday. That's when he sees Ronaldo killing Billy and stuffing him into a Bonnie suit and then taking the suit away. Ronaldo, I do want to say this. This is a big lore thing, and I showed it because, you know, Ronaldo chases Dan, but Ronaldo saw Dan, and Dan has a pretty iconic hat. He always wears that hat, and Ronaldo has a good memory. So just letting you know that. At the time of episode 0, Dan would be about 7 years old. Ant would be like 6-ish. And yeah, that happens. The kid that dies, his name was Billy West, which I named actually after the guy who voices Fry in Futurama. Big lead. I liked him. But a missing persons report was filed. Obviously, no clues were found. Ronaldo is really, really tied up on that hit and run. And again, I can't give you more information about that, but that is a big through line for the upcoming years. He also starts working on killing his other victims. So through the upcoming years, I'm not going to go into specifics yet. He obviously creates the first 5 soul-bound animatronics.
We all know Freddy,
Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie,
we all know
Golden
and
Freddy,
tolerate.
and a sixth one, which was the burned Freddy that attacked me near the end of FNAF 1. Those two, the Golden Freddy and the burned Freddy, have not been rectified in the plot line yet, but they will be in upcoming series. So hope you guys like that. I'm going to say this right now: the souls of the original 4 animatronics have been appeased and have passed on.
Good.
So that's good. Thank you, Cinery Saloon. And also, due to the events of Origins, there's a bit of a kind of halfway. I can't go into it yet.
Spoilers.
Some time passes. A lot of time passes, more than you'd think. Ant goes to college. He moves out of state. He moves away from Hurricane, Utah, which is where the Five Nights at Freddy franchise is based in, and he lives a pretty normal life. He's a little unlucky. We'll be going into maybe why he's a little bit unlucky in the future. But besides that, you know, he's living his American dream, which means he's crippled with a lot of college debt that he can't afford, and is struggling like almost all millennials. Eventually, he gets a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, we've got a well-paying job opportunity at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza," and that's what sets the events of FNAF 1 into place. FNAF 1. Obviously, that happens. I will say that was Dan's first day there. He says it out loud to Ant. And I'm not going to get into what Dan was doing before that because that is severe spoilers.
Ooh, okay.
Let out your conspiracy theorist in the comments or on my Discord.
Five Nights at Freddy's movie
It's great.
theater.
We have a whole section for that on the Discord. And I just like reading what you think might be coming up in the future. And sometimes, you know, you guys come up with good ideas, and I'll let you guys know if I end up liking a fan theory enough to incorporate it into the plot, because I'm not above that. If it sounds good, I can understand that. I do have most things planned out, but you know, some minor tweaks here and there I can do. The events of FNAF 1 happen. Obviously, there's nothing really to write home about FNAF 1 other than the fact that you got Ronaldo, you've got Ant, Dan, you've got the Five Nights at Freddy's animatronics. But the biggest plot thing that's important is them stumbling across the secret room that has, you know, Golden Freddy and Burn Freddy in it, and being attacked by them. That's a traumatic event that is very important to Dan, and we'll find out more about that in the future. Then the next thing is the factory. The factory is great. It takes place literally like maybe a week after the events of FNAF 1.
Jeez.
Nothing crazy really is different about the lore to the factory, except for the fact that after the events of the factory, one person that worked there named Billy, he survived, and he actually ends up suing Fazbear Entertainment for everything they're worth, because literally deadly environment. I do want to give you some lore about FNAF 2 because some of you guys might not have known this. First and foremost, all the animatronics in FNAF 2 did not have a soul in them. They were all AI operated. Really? That's why we shown Ronaldo doing a lot of commands in the intros and outros. So those were all just AIs deemed to become aggressive. And another thing I want to state, because I don't think I said it out loud, is that FNAF 1 takes place in 2015. So FNAF 2 also takes place in 2015. If FNAF 1 is August, FNAF 2 would be September. Right after that, at the events of FNAF 2, Ronaldo knocks out Dan and Ant. He actually corners them, and he drags them immediately to the Foundry, which is where Dan wakes up in FNAF Origins. Now, you might be like, but wait, there was a FNAF Fun Park, and I'm about to get to that. FNAF Fun Park does not technically take place, but there are important plot points in FNAF 3 that will become more apparent as the series continues to progress. The Fun Park's a very important place in Dan's life. The fact of the matter is I can't go into more detail without spoiling what I have planned, so I'm not going to, but just know that the Fun Park FNAF series takes place entirely inside Dan's consciousness. Now, that is not to say he is not affected by paranormal forces while he is in his consciousness. And I'm just saying that because it could be a dream, it could be something else, it could be drug-induced, it could be something else. I always like to joke that he was on drugs during FNAF 3, but that's not actually the case. I wanted to tell you that because it was the easiest way to explain that he wasn't all mentally there during that time. Then we have the events of Origins. So during the interim between FNAF 3 and Origins, Ant gets killed by Ronaldo. The fact of the matter is Ronaldo has been really after Ant. Ant is who he was deadlining for. Dan was just a coincidence for him to get to Ant, because they kind of work together. Like they're around each other a lot, so they're good friends. So obviously, if you can get Dan there, Ant might follow. And so yeah, so Ant gets killed. They are going after him. Ant gets scooped. They scoop out not exactly what you think. Again, I can't go into more details than that, but they got what they wanted out of Ant, and they dispose of his body. And the remaining remnant of Ant is what materializes as that Shadow Bonnie. Shadow Bonnie is Ant's consciousness, his soul, whatever you want to call it, given a physical form through willpower, but he is dead. Ant does not stay alive. He is never brought back to life. Every other instance of Ant is either a memory or a recreation. I like Origins for this one reason. We kind of just shotgunned through all the plot of the games that we didn't do a direct one-to-one recreation of. So he gets what he wants out of Ant, and of course the first thing Dan sees when he wakes up in Origins is Baby walking around. So some important plot points that might be brought up in the future, though, is Project Nightmare, which is where we see the Nightmare Fredbear. We also see the sewer system, which is much more plot relevant than you'd think. After he gets out of the sewers, we end up in the FNAF 2 location. He sees Ant again. He sees Elizabeth, which is a random victim that happened during the second spat of William Afton's murder sprees. Here's an Easter egg. We threw in Elizabeth as the name for the puppet because we wanted to allude to, we knew what William Afton's canon daughter's name would be. So that's why she's named Elizabeth. There's nothing else other than that, as just a cute little Easter egg saying, hey, I did the research, but we got it wrong prior. So Amelia, Ophelia, and Elizabeth, different. Nice. We appease that. We did the whole Springlock suit, and then, Baby realizes her father is weak and decides to take him on as a pawn. Dan is then discovered by police after leaving the establishment and starts to put his life back on track. He's reacclimated into society. This is now what's taking place between FNAF 4 Origins and Starlight happens, but that's a dream sequence. And Incendiary Saloon. So to Dan's perspective, the only things that have actually physically happened to him are FNAF 1, 2, Origins, and Incendiary Saloon. Everything else has been either a dream or something along those lines. And there is a reason to why he has these dreams. They put him on medication. You might have seen that in the intro or outro to Starlight Revival. That takes place a few years after the end of Origins. So Dan has like a period of like 5 years where, he isn't being attacked. He's not going into anything crazy. He's just trying to get his life back together. During that time, Billy from the factory wins his lawsuit and he becomes a multi-millionaire, and Fazbear Entertainment goes completely bankrupt. Here's a thing that I think is going to blow your mind is I want you to keep track of any certain items that might have shown up in multiple locations and any characters that you might have seen show up only during those locations. And it has to be a specific color. So that's all the hints I'm going to give you for this big thing. But yeah, so Starlight Revival happens. That is entirely a fever dream. There is no plot relevance at all. But it was a fun time. It's just fucking even if there was some development held behind it. And obviously, we then get to Incendiary Saloon. And here is some background lore you might not have picked up on. So Baby gets there with the illusion disc as Ant because she has a revenge plot against Dan. She doesn't really care about Dan other than, first off, she thinks she can bring her mom back, just like Ronaldo did. And also, like, Dan got away from her. She's upset about that. She comes up with this whole plot to be Ant get Dan to come to her. And that is how the events of Century Saloon start, is that in an inverse from what happened to Ant, Dan also gets a letter in the mail telling him, hey, here's a great job for you. And then Ant, or baby as Ant, kind of like sells it, because Dan and Ant were talking on the phone a lot. Because Dan believed that the Shadow Bonnie was more of a hallucination, because, you know, a lot of things to him don't seem quite as real as they should be. Then the plots of Manaf 6 happen, Century Saloon. And I do want to give you guys some lore that you might not have picked up on. The Remnant Lantern is very, very important to the overarching plot to Manaf, even before the events of Century Saloon. It only shows up after a certain someone shows up, and there's a reason for that. All right, so now we're going to start answering some questions that you guys have asked me on Twitter and on my Discord. And again, if you would like to, ask me more, you can always go to my Discord or message me on Twitter. I'll try to respond to any that I don't think are just like asking me very obvious questions I've already answered. So the first question, and this is the big one because everyone has a lot of issues with how does Fun Park work. This one is by John B, and he asks a very important question. In Fun Park, Dan figured out that the Fun Park wasn't real, and he was actually in a nightmare put in place by Ronaldo. What would have actually happened if he didn't figure that out? And what would have happened if they tried to open the park? So, the first thing I want to state is that in the lore I've established, the fact that the Fun Park ever opens is not even really a possibility.
Yeah.
And what would have happened if Dan didn't figure it out is most likely he would have been trapped in like a mental Groundhog Day kind of loop.
Yeah.
Living those 7 days over and over again. And he would have, he would have been kind of fine. It was just like, he was the head CEO. He was in charge. He wore a suit. It's cool. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. This one's not a question about the lore, but someone asked me this, and I thought it was a cool question. So by Jabe Din on Twitter, what is your favorite episode of Manaf, and what is your favorite moment in Manaf? So my favorite episode in Manaf would probably have to be, there's a lot. I enjoyed most of the factory a lot, and I really, really loved almost the entirety of Century Saloon. My favorite moment in Manaf, I have a few, and I'm just going to shotgun them. I really loved Ant blowing up at Chica and just screaming at it with the pop gun and all that kind of stuff. That whole stuff with aggro Ant was amazing. I loved every minute of it. Manaf 2 had a lot of funny jokes. I like the part where we were pretending to be animatronics, and the other animatronics follow us into the bathroom, like Vixie, I think, followed us into the bathroom. We like just berate her for, not respecting our privacy, and it's like, I gotta leak oil. You don't want to watch that. And so I like that too. But if I had to go with my favorite moment out of all of Manaf, it would probably be the ending salvage shed sequence with Baby. I just felt like the dialogue, the voice actress for Baby did a phenomenal job. It gave us actual resolution, and it was just probably the most high quality thing I've ever done with Manaf. So I'm really proud of it. In fact, all of Century Saloon is probably my favorite series in general I worked on, just because everything was from scratch. We had some really cool ideas. The next question is by Green Rule 66, and he asks, why did Michael put the robot head on Ant in Manaf 3 and then proceed to chase Dan around for the rest of the video, only to wind up helping Dan later in the season? So,
he's a dick.
We kind of had an accidental miscommunication when recording, because the person that was supposed to put the head onto Ant was supposed to be purple. It was supposed to be Ronaldo. Because of the shaders I was using, I didn't catch that, and he looks very similar. I'm going to put them back up on the screen right now. Here's Ronaldo as purple guy with my shaders on, and here's Michael as gray guy, and their faces are very similar. And because of the desaturation, I didn't pick up on that. We used the wrong one. Now, the reason why Michael is chasing Dan around for the rest of the video is actually because Michael is trying to talk to Dan, and Dan thinks he's Ronaldo, so he's running away. Ballistic Ducks asks, what was the aftermath of the factory? Like, did cops ever arrive, and was it reopened? stay tuned.
Oh.
Thank you so much for sitting through this video. I don't know how long it is, but I assume it's pretty long, so thanks for just listening to me talk for a bit. I'm really excited, and I really want to be able to do YouTube and make more content for you guys. So thank you so much for like sticking with me throughout all these years. It really means a lot to me. Hopefully you'll like what we have in store, because I think there are some things that will blow your mind, maybe, or maybe not. Who knows? Maybe you'll be like, I guessed this all the way back in season 2. And if so, congratulations, because you managed to guess something that I didn't even think about at that time. So with that, I'll talk to you guys later. More content soon. We're going to also be probably releasing the SCP movie eventually in the future too, because I'm not abandoning SCP as well. And
I might
see
check that out when it comes out. This was just interesting to get some more lore in the Manaf series. I've been interested in the Manaf series since it came out. Always fun to see more stuff, and it was great to see more cavemen, because I like cavemen, both as a person and as a content creator. Feels like a great guy. Interesting lore bits. I'm thinking that the item they're talking about is a freaking tutu thing. I know it's not very likely, but it's funny. Probably not that, though. And, yeah, I don't really have any other questions. I'm just interested in knowing more lore. Anyway, that's pretty much it. So, coolio.